Hey everybody, this is one of my little cry and my wine videos, but a lot of people fuss about, my this woman that I've been following the last 28 years, twice as long as Jacob worked to get Rachel, but I'm proud of that anyway. So anyway, but it's not just about her; it's about some other things. And about like bad mouthing people, talking about them behind their backs or slandering them. I notice a lot of people around this time of year like to get all hyped up about politics and try to talk bad about this politician or defend this one. And then they do this about preachers too, which I hold preachers accountable to being real and honest and doing right. But politicians, don't respect nothing from them. So anyway, I'm telling you a story about a person that very few of you know about. Very few of you know the names of the people in the story or the story itself. So I think I'm pretty safe in keeping from slandering anybody, at least anyone that you know of. So many years ago, I was going to a church in Arlington where I met this beautiful woman. And this preacher was very charismatic. He was always talking bad about everybody else, celebrities, and he's always talking about how great he was and preaching the word without compromise. And it did a lot of good things. Some people preach out of good motives, some people don't. As long as Christ is preached, Christ was preached in with his message. But anyway, very into what we call the spiritual authority. In other words, just don't disagree with him. If you disagree with him, you're wrong. I went to their teaching about that. Basically, anybody who disagrees with him, you're wrong, and it's all about how great he is. The wonderful preacher. So that's kind of the things I was going up against me with this relationship with her. So I got my cheat sheet here, so I know what to do. So basically, I disagree with him, probably in a lot of things, but one thing in particular was one night I was visiting his church after I'd left, and he was preaching from Galatians where it says, neither circumcision nor uncircumcision amounts to anything. The only thing that matters is faith expressing itself through love. Now, he was teaching from some little small book. I'm not sure whose book it was, but eventually he came to say that faith works by love, which is not what the Bible actually says. It's faith which worketh by love avails much, or faith expressing itself through love is all that matters. Different translations. So basically, he took just a little part of a scripture, twisted it just a little bit, and then started saying you can't have faith without love because faith works by love, which is not what the Bible actually says. So I wrote him a letter in private. And, of course, I said, hey, by the way, that's not what it actually says. This is what it actually says. And I quoted it. And then I said, Paul said that I can have all faith as to move mountains. And if I don't have love, I'm nothing. So apparently that's not his statement was not true. I mean, anybody who reads the Bible carefully knows. But it's a very subtle little thing he did. And, of course, he's the preacher. You don't disagree with him. So he's got to be right. Anybody who disagrees with him is wrong. So that's kind of one of the things. So I wrote him a letter. And it wasn't necessarily a super nice, courteous letter. So eventually, I wrote him eventually, what I did after writing that letter, I went in person and apologized to him for having any kind of disrespectful attitude. And of course, he wasn't on his pulpit, so he's kind of like, oh yeah, no big deal. He didn't really say he was sorry or forgave me, but kind of like, that's all right. So I did apologize to him in private for disrespectful attitude. So now this church had a college group over at UTA. It's called Alpha Delta Chi, and this girl was going to it, and so I thought, well, I'm going to check it out. Of course, my ulterior motive was really just to see her. I won't lie about that, but nevertheless, I started going, and the guy, the pastor who was in charge of that was real cool. He's like, oh yeah, man, great to have you. And we kind of had some friendship going on there. And so anyway, the Lord told me to quit chasing her, and that meant don't go to this group anymore. So I've told a few people about this, but I said, okay, I'm going to go just a few more times just to see if anything happens. So I said, okay, I'm going one more time. This is it. If nothing happens, I'm just done. I made up my mind. So I actually had a dream that week. I don't know if it was the night before, but it was that week I had a dream. And in that dream, it was weird. My dreams are exaggerated, okay, so don't freak out. So in the dream, I was sitting at a table, actually sitting with a table that some of you watching this, you might know the person, but in the dream, I was sitting with this person who was a very humble person, simple person, and very servant, faithful servant type of guy. And I was naked. We were sitting at a table, and then I looked over, and her and I were looking at each other. We were eye to eye, like eye to eye, like just looking at each other, but she was circled by her friends, and it was like I was outside of the circle, and it was like there's this chasm between us, this fence, whatever you want to call it, of her, basically her church friends of where she went. And I was on the outside, and she was on the inside. We were separated by that. So that night, I went, and I was clothed. I was clothed. But we, after their little group, me and this other guy were kind of talking, who was kind of one of the outsiders, and they were kind of hanging out. I was expecting we're all going to walk out together, and they say, well, y'all need to leave because we're having a meeting. And her and I kind of made that eye contact, and I was like, okay, well, I guess that's it. So I called the pastor who was in charge of that group and actually led it. I called him the next morning. I said, hey, here's the situation. It's not lust or sinful thoughts about this woman, but the Lord told me to quit chasing her, so I can't come to the group anymore. And he was all cool. So, and then he actually invited me to the older group, which I wasn't interested in. I was kind of like, I don't want to go. So anyway, that was that. Now, they did call me once when they were having a going away party for their president, who was one of her friends, and I've actually contacted that woman via Facebook, and actually contacted her recently, and just kind of said, hi, hello, how you doing, and she's a really nice girl, writes back nice, replies. So anyway, they had a group, and I went and ate lunch with them or something there, and that was the last I really went. So now I still kept visiting, and so this was after I quit going, and I would be, when people are infatuated, they do silly things. Infatuation means you do silly things because you're in love. So I would try to leave a letter on her car, and she walked out and busted me. It was at her church, after her church service, and she said, hey, give me a call, So I called her. I was like all chicken, and I called her, and she was like saying, well, my friend says, you're a guy and I'm a girl, maybe you're interested in me. And I was like too chicken to say yeah. But we were talking, and she was saying something about, well, you could come back to church here. And I'm like, I don't want to, because I know the pastor's kind of hurling insults at me from his pulpit. And she said, what she said after that she was told that I committed some kind of sin against the pastor and hadn't repented of it. I said, well, hey, I apologize to him for the letter I wrote. I didn't get too much in detail, but she said, well, I wasn't told that. So obviously someone knew to pick her out, and tell her that I was a bad person and committed some horrible sin, and that happened. So I actually tried to contact the guy who I had told that I liked her, and never really got an answer. I mean, I've tried for years to contact this guy. Finally, I tracked him down like the internet and found where he goes to church up in Oklahoma, and I contacted his pastor even. But before that, of course, I sent him some of my Bible study notes, which eventually I sent to Stephanie, and this other girl, and offended her. But and he got all mad about that, but he never answered my question. Simple question: did you have anything to do with telling her that I committed some horrible sin? But never a straight answer, even to his pastors. And I even emailed him recently and said, hey, I want to come up there and visit your church and crash your home group. And then recently I mean, the guys who I don't know what he's afraid of, little peon like myself. But I said I want to bring my guitar and do a few songs for you. But then next thing you know, they took his thing off their church's website. I guess he's afraid of me. I don't know why. So maybe it's because I'm good looking. I don't know. So anyway, never got this guy to answer. Now one of the other pastors who I'm Facebook friends with, he actually called right away. Said no, he didn't have anything to do with it. You know, he was not afraid to do that. So now I want to talk to you about. See, very few of you know who I'm talking about when I talk about these preachers. Only my very close friends know. So years later, a friend of mine who I followed to this church, I guess he started going back for a little bit, or he met somebody who was going to this church, and then we introduced us, you know, and then me and this guy became friends, and then even one of his friends from that church started hanging out with us, even going to some of the Shady Grove events. So zealous guy, great guy, you know, zealous for good works, and eventually I noticed he kind of quit communicating with me, you know. So I'm out walking, and I walk by his apartment, see him out there, and I say, hey, what's going on? So he says, I'll give you a ride home, you know. But he tells me that their staff attorney for this congregation told him what a bad person I was and how evil I was and how I said all this bad stuff about their pastor or disagreed with him, whatever. And the amazing thing is like he just saw my name on this guy's email list, and then calls this guy out. And what's even weirder, maybe, is I actually went to hear him play when a big name preacher was going to their church for a rally. And I just heard him play, and I was like, okay, I'm done, you know. I've heard this other guy before. So, and I was talking to the ushers as I was leaving. They said, hey, what's going on? I said, you know, I just want to hear my friend play, and I gave him my name and told him. And then they actually told my friend that he's like, tell me, yeah, they told me when you walked out, you just wanted to hear me play, you know, you didn't want to stay for this big preacher. And I'm like, well, yeah, I just wanted to hear you play, no big deal, no offense. I thought, man, one of these guys got in my legal file, you know, I'd like to read it sometime, you know. It's got to be some silly stuff. But actually their staff attorney, who I recently found out who he was, he's passed away a few years ago, and otherwise I'd probably contact him. But anyway, so I wrote, after he told me that, he's like, oh, we're going to get this all straightened out. And I'm like, yeah, right. So he's thinking he's going to be a hero and, you know, sort it out. So time goes by. I thought, okay, well, I'm going to write this guy a letter. So I don't know his name. I just write to their church a letter and say, hey, you know, my friend said this, you know, if you got a problem, let's talk about it. And after a week or two, no response, I thought, well, I'll write another letter. So I wrote another letter saying, hey, you know, call me, whatever. If you got something to say it to me. You know, I'm a semi-grown man, maybe, I don't know. So I wrote him 2 letters. Then I thought, well, this guy ain't responding. You know, I have a feeling that, you know, they're good at throwing rocks from the pulpit, the safety of the pulpit, and slandering me behind my back. But, you know, suddenly when I want to talk to him face to face, it's like, you know, the guy got a problem. So I started writing insulting letters. I mean, really good insulting letters. Talking about TDS, you know, this guy's got testosterone deficiency syndrome, you know, you need to lay hands on him and stuff like that. And then some other stuff I don't want to mention. But, so I was really burnt up with it. And I look back on it now, and I think there's probably some other things I could have done, like maybe respond to an email and just blast this guy before all these people, you know, on this email list. But glad I didn't. So I was pretty mad about that. So I thought, okay, well, my home group leaders at Shady Grove, I brought it to their attention. I even showed them some of my emails and letters I sent. You know, I just say, hey, here's what's going on. This is what I did. You know, I did this. So they invited me over for dinner and had a word with me, and they said, well, here's what we want you to do. We want you to apologize to this guy. So I wrote a letter of apology, and mailed it, and that was the end of that. So, but I was very burnt up with that. You know, I mean, I'll be honest, it really ate me up. I mean, I was bitter, angry, and I think I even posted this on Facebook a few years back. But I was really bitter and angry and scared, you know, and I thought all these years, the only thing I haven't done is just show up at this guy's, one of his services and shake his hand, you know. I did actually run into him in public once. He was in my in the parts department, walking into the parts department of my dealership. Some of you familiar with the old layout of our parts and service. I could see him walking out in the hallway through the glass wall, and I thought about, man, what would I do if I walked out there and said, hey, what's going on? You know, then he walked into my parts department, and I thought, wow, here I am face to face with this guy. But I didn't say anything. So, but back in 2014, I went on a mission trip with a person who's friends with him, and after that, I said, you know, I'm just gonna go show up to their service and talk to him afterwards. So I did, you know, and I walked up to him. And I said, hey, what's going on? You know, and I said, do you remember me? And he goes, well, you kind of look familiar. I said, well, Mark Shackelford. He goes, oh, hey, how you doing? You know, and we kind of made small talk. We didn't hug and cry and make up or anything like that, but I went and just talked to him in person and just let him know that, hey, I'm not hard feelings, you know. I don't have, well, maybe I did, but I was over it. Wanted to shake his hand in peace. So, but as many of you know, there's only a few of you who actually know who this person is. My roommate knows, and probably what the friend I followed over this church back in 1990 knows. He probably knows the most detail about it. But you probably noticed that I'm not like slandering this guy, you know, publicly, trying to make a mockery of him or expose. As a matter of fact, even I realized that after these years, that this man's a hurt man, just like a lot of us. You know, he's just a hurt person that hasn't been able to cope with his father's rejection for him wanting to go into ministry. Now, I don't justify anything he does because of that, but, you know, none of us are perfect, and I surely ain't either. So, I want to say this because, you know, we don't need to go around just throwing rocks at people. You know, if I got something to say to somebody like this man, I'll write him a letter in person or email. You know, I don't have to, I don't feel like it's going to do any good to just go, you know, slander him or whatever, poke, especially exaggerated stuff that may not be true. He's probably got some, I noticed he's received some flack for some of the stuff he's put on YouTube, which is actually kind of funny. But I just want to say, hey, if we got a problem with someone, even he himself taught a sermon about, you know, if your brother sins against you, go to him in private. If you win him over, great. If you don't, you know, take someone with you. So there'll be 2 or 3 witnesses. If he hears you, great. If not, take it to the church. Then if you refuse to listen to the church, then treat him as a tax collector, you know, IRS agent. But obviously in practice with me, that never happened. You know, no one from their church seems to know what I did wrong. It's just that, or it came to me, you know, and said, hey, you did this wrong, you need to repent. It's just like, you know, just rejection, you know, cast you out, you know, because your pastor says, and, you know, it's not questionable. But nevertheless, that's my message there. I just want to say that, you know, hey, let's quit throwing rocks at people. You know, if you got a problem with someone, talk to them. And if you're afraid to talk to them by yourself, take someone with you and talk to them first before you go around and just throw rocks. Well, that's all I got to say for now. Peace and blessings.